Okay, picture this. You're in Jerusalem. It is absolutely packed, I mean wall-to-wall people, for one of the biggest religious festivals of the entire year. The air is just electric with anticipation, with prayer. And right in the middle of all this sacred commotion, something is about to happen that's so radical, so completely unexpected, it will literally split the nation in two.
And then, all of a sudden, a voice just cuts through the noise of the temple courts. It's this shocking, almost unbelievable public cry, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink." Now, you gotta understand, this isn't some quiet teaching in a corner. This is a bold, public shout for everyone to hear.
So that's the big question for our explainer today. Who on earth would have the sheer audacity to stand up in the most sacred place during the most sacred time and make an offer like that? What did it even mean? And maybe more importantly, why was it so incredibly dangerous? To really get to the bottom of that mystery, we have to understand the setting. We have to get the vibe, because this wasn't just any random Tuesday. This cry came at the absolute climax of a deeply symbolic and, frankly, very high-stakes national festival. It was called the Feast of Booths, or Sukkot. Think of it as this massive 8-day-long national party. It was all about celebrating two huge things. First, God's faithfulness when Israel was wandering in the wilderness, and second, the pure joy of the autumn harvest coming in. It was a pilgrimage feast, which means if you were a devout Jew, Jerusalem was the place you had to be.
And this festival was full of these incredible symbolic rituals. People would build these little temporary shelters or booths to remember how their ancestors lived. At night, the temple courts would be lit up with giant lamps illuminating the whole city. But, and this is the most important part for our story, the main event was the water ceremony. Every single day, a priest would go draw water from the Pool of Siloam, lead this joyful parade back to the temple, and then pour that water out at the altar. It was this powerful, acted-out prayer for rain and a symbol of God's life-giving blessing. Okay, so just keep that water in your mind. It's going to be a big deal.
But this festival wasn't just a happy celebration. There was serious tension in the air. A manhunt was underway. The religious authorities, the top leadership in Jerusalem, were actively looking for Jesus to arrest him. So for him to show up here, in public, in the very heart of their power, well, he'd be walking right into the lion's den.
All right, so you see how this is all building, right? Jesus' arrival is this masterclass in contrasts. He shows up in secret, but his actions are going to be anything but quiet. He's about to challenge the highest authorities in the land right on their own turf. At the beginning, his own brothers are kind of pressuring him, saying, "Go on, go to the festival, make a big public splash." But Jesus tells them no. He says, "My appointed time has not yet come." He's working on a completely different schedule. The Greek word he uses here is kairos, and that doesn't just mean time on a clock. It means the right time, the opportune moment, the divinely appointed moment. And then boom! Right when nobody expects it, halfway through the festival, he just appears. He walks straight into the temple courts, the exact place where his enemies are looking for him, and he just starts teaching. I mean, the boldness of that move is it's astonishing. And of course, right away, he gets into this big debate about his authority, specifically about his healing someone on the Sabbath. And his argument is just brilliant. He uses this classic legal reasoning. He points out a little conflict in their own law. The law says, don't work on the Sabbath. But the law also says you have to circumcise a baby boy on his 8th day. So what happens if the 8th day falls on a Sabbath? Well, everyone knew the answer. The command to circumcise was so important that it actually overrode the rule about work. And that's where he delivers the punchline. He says, look, if you're willing to break the Sabbath for a ritual that affects just one part of a person's body, why on earth are you so angry with me for making a whole person well on the Sabbath? And then he hits them with this powerful challenge. Do not judge by appearance, but judge with right judgment. He's telling them to look past the surface-level rules and find the deeper truth. Okay, so all of that, the festival, that water ritual, the danger, the legal showdown, all of it brings us back to the main event. Now that we've got all the context, we can finally understand the massive, earth-shattering impact of his cry. Here's a cool little detail. The original Greek text uses the word krazo to describe how Jesus spoke. This is so important. This wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a quiet teaching. A krazo is a loud cry, a public summons. It's a word designed to cut through all the noise and make every single person turn their head. And his timing? It's just perfect. It's the last and greatest day of the feast.
That water pouring ceremony we talked about, it's at its absolute peak of joy and celebration. The procession is going on, the prayers for life-giving rain are being offered, and it's at that precise moment that Jesus stands up and makes his move.
And there it is again. With the symbol of water fresh in absolutely everyone's mind, he shouts those words. He is essentially standing up and saying, hey, you know that ritual you're all celebrating? That water you're pouring out as a symbol? I am the reality that all of this is pointing to.
And he promises living water. Now, in that culture, that phrase meant fresh, flowing, running water. You know, the good stuff, not stagnant pond water. But it was also a really loaded term. It echoed all these ancient prophecies about a life-giving river that would one day flow from the temple itself. So by using this phrase, Jesus is making an absolutely incredible claim that he is the true source of spiritual life that the entire festival was designed to celebrate.
Now, as you can probably imagine, a claim like that does not go unnoticed. It forces everyone who hears it to make a decision. And the aftermath was immediate. It was division, it was confusion, and it tells us everything about just how powerful his words were. The reaction was instant chaos. There was no middle ground here. Some people were convinced on the spot, this is the Messiah. Others thought, okay, he's at least a prophet. But plenty of others believed he was a dangerous fraud, a deceiver. Even the temple guards who were sent to arrest him came back empty-handed, basically saying, we've never heard anyone speak like this man. His words just drew a sharp line in the sand. So John, the guy writing this all down, he adds this little editor's note for us, his readers. He clarifies that this living water Jesus is talking about is actually a metaphor for the Holy Spirit. But then he adds a crucial detail. The Spirit wouldn't be given in this new, powerful way until after Jesus was glorified, which is John's special term for Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. This amazing promise was actually a future hope tied to the completion of Jesus' entire mission.
And this leads us to this really fascinating puzzle in the text that scholars still debate. Jesus goes on to say, whoever believes in me, out of his belly will flow rivers of living water. The question is, whose belly is he talking about? Is it the believer's belly or Christ's belly?
So there are two main ways to look at this, and it kind of comes down to a debate of source versus channel. The first view is that the rivers flow from the believer's belly. This means that once you receive the Spirit, you become a channel of God's life to the world around you. The second view argues that his belly refers back to Christ. This pictures Jesus himself as the new temple, the true ultimate source from which the life-giving Spirit flows out to everyone else.
Now, while that scholarly debate is super interesting, both interpretations really point to the same incredible transformation. See, Jesus' offer isn't just about you getting a drink for yourself. Whether he's the ultimate source or believers are the channels, the result is the same. A person who is connected to him becomes a fountain of divine life for others.
And that, right there, brings this ancient story crashing right into our lives today. That shocking offer, made in a crowded temple 2,000 years ago, is still on the table. It moves from being just a historical event to a deeply personal question, and it leaves us with one final thing to think about. What thirst are you bringing to Christ today?